There's a big Mexican flag that's being carried around here. Lots of cameras are all over it, and I believe you might be able to see this too. Our cameraman is on his way from inside the pavilion. Police have now moved in to clear it out. Lots of cell phones have been pulled out of people who want to record all this. But now it looks like it's calmed down. Police have moved in. They've calmed this one down. So, John, I think what you're seeing is little skirmishes breaking out here and there. But, again, this is on one corner, and what you're seeing might be different. But now this one is broken up.
Can you tell us, I mean, what about the police presence? How many, can you get a sense of whether there's a strong police presence outside? And were there barriers set up to try to keep people apart or not?
Yes, actually there were very long barriers on all the sides of the pavilion to separate everybody. And you know, this is a massive effort, at least by the looks of it. There was campus police, state police, Chicago City Police, the FBI, and such to keep the peace. So they had the barriers are up. The barriers are keeping people back from the entrance of the pavilion, as are the horseback officers. But you know, right now, police just seem to be doing what I'm doing right now, looking for little skirmishes breaking out, moving in, breaking it up, and then moving on. And their hope is they're just hoping that I guess Trump supporters get tired and move on.
Well, I'm just looking at a picture, what looks like a garage outside, and people going up to different floors of that parking garage, but unable to get out because it looks like the entrance to the parking garage, you know, is blocked by protesters. So if people wanted to leave, if they're trying to get out of the area, it doesn't look like they're going to get out for a while because their cars are blocked and there's no way to get out of at least one of those entrances or exits to the parking garage. Stand by, Darren. Stand by, Andy, because I've got Darren Porcher, who's a retired NYPD lieutenant. He's on the telephone. Darren, what are you seeing tonight, based on your knowledge of police? Of how police handle a situation like this. What sort of job is Chicago Police Department doing?
Okay, when you think about situations like this, because Donald Trump is a presidential candidate, the Secret Service are at the forefront of security in connection with this. And usually there's a coordination. There's a coordinated approach in that the Secret Service will give directives to the local PD. However, when I look at a situation like this, it appears to be out of control, and that then the Secret Service would have given the green light to the quote-unquote Chicago PD to come inside. So when we reflect back on why did it take so long for the police to respond, it was because it was predicated on the direction of the Secret Service.
I mean, I don't know, but I would suspect protesters came inside to try to disrupt this rally, and there may, you know, we have a First Amendment in this country. You have to let people go to a public event, but at the same time, you would think that there would be a plan to try to keep the protesters and the Donald Trump supporters apart.
Right. Well, it's a very difficult thing when we think about the First Amendment. You know, or our freedom to assemble. It's not guaranteed. It's not absolute. Here we have a situation that was clear public alarm. Where the demonstrators are positioned as opposed to the Trump supporters is going to be very difficult for the organizers to determine, because when they purchase a ticket, anyone has the ability to purchase the ticket just based on them appearing to be a supporter. So it's really difficult for the organizers to determine who's who. But when they came into the stadium, so to speak, and they started to organize, that's when the security within the venue had to put forth a contingency plan. Now, all large-scale arenas and stadiums, they have a contingency plan for if there's a riot, a stampede, and things to that effect, and that's what they'll roll out. So when we think in connection with where people are sitting and where the people are sitting, it's really hard for you to determine. But the contingency plan that the stadium has is what's going to come into play initially. That clearly seemed like it didn't work. The second piece to that was, like I mentioned earlier, the Secret Service. They're at the forefront of that, and they tried to contain it the best way that they could.
Well, they're clearly going to have to rethink how they're going to handle this situation in the future, because I suspect they're going to deal with it again. Stand by, Darren, because I want to bring back Peter Matthews, who's a political analyst and professor of political science at Cypress College. So, Peter, what's the political impact on the race for the Republican nomination and the impact on this presidential race in general of a scene like this tonight?
It can go in any direction if you think about it, John. I'm looking at the elections coming up on Tuesday and the states of Ohio and Florida. Depending on what happens there will also determine what position Trump will have in this whole scheme of things. But the people who support Trump and those who oppose him are not going away. And that's unfortunate also that this can happen again in the next rally is going to be holding. And the people have to, Trump himself and other leaders who have influence on these folks, and many of them are very independent in terms of what they think, have to tone down the rhetoric and get some sort of a semblance of reason here in terms of determining what this country's facing and what has to be done in terms of race relations and class relations and opportunities. So this particular event today was completely unexpected at this level.
So could it have an impact on the elections Tuesday? I mean,
absolutely.
One theory could be that it would bring out more Donald Trump supporters, because there are a lot of angry people, and they don't all support Donald Trump, but maybe this helps them rally around Donald Trump. Do you think?
It could very well do that, because some of those folks who have a tendency to support him would be what they'd call their law and order type voters or thinkers, and they say, wow, it's time now for us to rally behind this man. He's the only one who can bring a semblance of order. There's all kinds of reasons that people will vote for Trump, and this could be one of them that brings in new people. On the other hand, the anti-Trump people are going to vote as well. They're going to rally people to get out there, and they're already ready to go. Now, some of them might get, I don't know if Illinois has instant registration. Some states have instant voter registration where you can actually register to vote on the same day as the election. If it does, then in that case, you could have a surge of voters coming in and registering in the Democratic primary. Actually, it's also an open primary. So anyone can vote for either party's candidates.
Are these live pictures? I'm just asking in the control room.
And I think all of this comes into play.
These are live pictures on the right of another confrontation.
Another one.
With police. Let me just reset for a second as we watch these pictures, because we begin with this wild confrontation, as you can see, happening right now at what was going to be a Donald Trump rally in Chicago. The tensions are so high that organizers were forced to cancel it just a little while ago because of security concerns. This is the scene at the University of Illinois, Chicago. The pavilion inside just about a half an hour or 45 minutes ago was packed with thousands of people. Most of them were Trump supporters, but a good portion, maybe 1,000 or more, were anti-Trump folks, protesters. And there were confrontations and some fights inside. Police cleared the area, moved everybody out, and this fight has continued out onto the street, out onto the sidewalk, outside the pavilion. A large crowd that are complaining about Donald Trump and his rhetoric are fighting, in some cases, police, in some cases, Donald Trump supporters. There's a huge parking garage, which is right down from the pavilion where many of these people had parked their cars and are still trying to get their cars out. And as you can see, that's a large part of the crowd that's gathered right outside of that entrance. I just want to go back to Peter Matthews, a political analyst and professor of political science at Cypress College. We've got Andy Roesgen, who is outside with the crowd now, and I believe we have Darren Porcher, who's a former NYPD lieutenant. Let me just start with Andy. What are you seeing right now, Andy?
Yeah, we're at that parking garage. This is where the whole thing is really centered right now. Just to answer your question, I talked to police. Cars can't get out of an entrance or an exit of this parking garage, so they're just kind of guiding them out and keeping people from going into the parking garage. But really, what's it become now is all these thousands and thousands of Trump opponents blocked off, shouting back and forth. Police are lined up here. There's no skirmishes going on here at this point. They're shouting things like, who won? We won. Whose city? Our city. Whose school? Our school. And there are a few people, Trump supporters, still facing off against them, but very, very small or much smaller crowd right now as the Trump opponents basically are in gloat mode. We passed one man, don't know if he was a Trump supporter, but he was giving them the Nazi salute for the longest time, silently, and they shouted back. But that's, at this point, the police are keeping the peace here. All these barricades are working, and they're keeping the two sides apart. But really, John, the Trump supporters are dwindling. The Trump opponents just want to gloat as much as possible.
Yeah, it's working
and
in some
relish in this
places,
victory.
Andy. It's not working in others. And we were seeing these pictures. These are not live pictures. That was just moments ago of a fight that was breaking out in the street. Let me talk a little bit about the University of Illinois Chicago. Give me a sense of how many students go there. Is this an urban campus?
Yeah, it's an urban campus, and very diverse, very, very diverse. Muslims, African American, I mean, it's extremely diverse, very democratic leaning campus. And so the folks here, the Trump opponents, initially, right away, right when the rally was announced, mobilized. They set up a Stop Trump Chicago website, a social media site, where everyone could RSVP. A couple of days ago, they said they've got about 9,000 people who said they would be here to protest. 9,000 matches about the same number of people who are allowed in the pavilion. And about 45,000 people signed a petition on MoveOn.org to stop the Trump rally. About 200 teachers demanded that the schools cancel the event out of fears of violence. But truthfully, John, a lot of people who don't like Trump wanted this to go on.
Hey, Andy, just going to break in for a second again, because what appears to be happening out on the highway near the pavilion is some people out in the middle of the highway trying to block traffic, and in some cases have been able to block traffic. And I saw this on other streets as well around the pavilion, right? Right, and that's a common tactic. They've been doing that. After the shooting of LaFon McDonald back in over a year ago now. But when that video was released that touched off all the rioting in Chicago, that was a big deal. A lot of people just took to the streets. They blocked streets, they blocked interstates, and they're doing that again tonight. They're not going to let this go. I think this is just their way of saying that we're not going to let it go, and it continues. And like I said, I think a lot of these Trump opponents. There were those who wanted this event canceled, but there were a lot more who wanted it to go on, even though they opposed Trump, because they wanted, as they said, to empower their voices, to get their voices out there. And this was their way to do it. And they're going to have a lot to celebrate here, because they did what no other Trump opponents have done to this point, and that is actually get an event canceled. As I said, Trump has announced he will appear in Bloomington, Illinois, much friendlier country than Chicago, this coming Sunday at 10 a.m. But for now, he has lost this one. John? All right, stand by for just a second. I want to bring back in Peter Matthews and talk a little bit about the political implications. It seems to me, Peter, that Donald Trump is going to say something either tonight or tomorrow about what happened here. And in some ways, he can fan the flames of the anger on the part of his own supporters, or he can try to calm everyone down.
Yes.
What's your sense of it?
I would think that he's going to try to calm people down, but you never know with Donald Trump. He's very volatile and unpredictable, and he plays to the crowd of voters. He wants voters, so he might fall for the idea that if he can get more brazen about this and make inflammatory remarks, he can get more votes out, and I hope he doesn't do that. He needs to try to calm supporters down so that the other folks will also calm down and really work in the ballot box as opposed to in this way. I mean, this is important to allow free speech on both sides, especially the side of the demonstrators who want to make a point here. And I think that to have 9,000 people go out there, John, this is really amazing that it actually happened. It's well organized through the internet as well. You said there were something like 45,000 support through MoveOn.org that also supported in some way or the other. But to have 9,000 actual people out there is quite remarkable, and it's not going to go away. And unless Donald Trump makes the right statements tomorrow, this can get really highly inflamed and go across the country in the election season, unfortunately.
It also strikes me that we've seen these protests in New York and Ferguson, all over the country.
Yes.
That have talked about Black Lives Matter, that have protested police shootings of African Americans.
Yes.
And Dante Barry, just a little while ago, suggested that this is about race. And as you look at these pictures, is this an issue of black-white, of white Latino, of Muslim white? Are we being divided by ethnicity and religion and race?
I don't think so entirely, John. There is an ethnic component to it because Donald Trump's remarks were ethnically directed against Muslims and Latinos. And yet there are many progressive young white people who are out there on the front lines with the other folks as well, in a multi-ethnic coalition to say that America is about fairness and justice and inclusion, and Donald Trump is wrong. So if you look at this crowd here, you're not going to find just African-American students. Take a look. There's a real multi-ethnic dimension to this group of people who are speaking out on this, and I think it's going to continue, and Donald Trump would do well if he would just calm things down tomorrow, attempt to be more conciliatory, and he should come out and repudiate David Duke very clearly and the rest of those extremists that have come aboard on his campaign.
Peter, stand by a second. Joining us now on the telephone is